So good morning. My name is David Frank. I'm the Executive Director of the New York State Education Department's Charter School Office. We hope everyone is doing well. We're joined today by the Executive Director of School in the Square, a Board of Regents authorized charter school in Manhattan, Evan Myers, and School in the Square's principal, Carrie Amon. Today, Evan and Carrie are going to talk a little bit about their education continuity plan, the challenges and effective practices that they've encountered. And I also look forward to hearing a little bit more about School in the Square. Evan, could you just talk a little bit about the school, where you are, what grades you serve, and your mission and vision?
School in the Square is named after that vision of the public square. So it starts with an ethos of relationships first, a place where everyone is welcome, everybody's voice matters. That kind of thinking is built into the actual structures of our extended day, as well as just how we speak to each other and interact with each other. So I would say it's a very, to use a hackneyed term, whole child approach to education, which we think will give them the dispositions, communication, collaboration, original research, being able to take something you learned here, use it there, to believe that you really are in the center of your own learning and future as a way forward. We are a 6, 7, 8 middle school that will be opening up an elementary school starting in the fall. Of course, nail biting around that. And we are located in northern Manhattan, Washington Heights, Inwood area, and really have worked hard, true to our name, to integrate our work with that of the community.
Thanks, Evan. And Carrie, in this current crisis, how are your students and staff holding up? How is everyone doing?
I think that, of course, people have their own personal struggles that they're going through. But as a school, we are certainly pulling together. Our teachers and SEL staff and ops team are working side by side with families and kids on a daily basis to provide as much support. And support, such a big word these days. And so that support can be a friendly good morning to, what resources do you need and how can we help your family with some extra food or getting materials that they may need to complete work in school. So David, everyone has been just absolutely incredible and amazing.
But David, I would center how we're doing around the word trying to stay connected. And what Carrie wouldn't say about herself is how we begin all of our Zoom interactions with a real connection. Where are you in your house? How are you? What is happening for you? And really trying to remember to pause to stay connected despite the urgency of all the work.
Thank you. And I think that really carries the ethos of School in the Square from your brick and mortar building to now the virtual interactions that you're having with students. Can you talk a little bit about your general educational continuity plan? How did you make the transition and what does instruction look like today at School in the Square?
So we're really proud of the work that our staff is doing and that our kids are doing. We did do some practice runs while we were still in school. And so that was supportive and helpful once we needed to leave the building. We had some planning time with our teachers and some professional development around all of the technology that's out there and all of the possibilities. And then on our final day, our staff all came in and our kids were at home and we held a remote day from the school building to the kids at home. And what that was able to do for our staff was to really brainstorm what were the needs, what do we need to troubleshoot, where were kids internet weak and couldn't really stay on for the entire period. And so that really helped us lead the way into our new virtual space. I will say that in week 1, We tried to mimic exactly our schedule that we have every day in school, and then received a lot of feedback from both our kids and our staff. And again, that's something that we pride ourselves on. We like to get feedback, reflect on that, and make adaptations and changes. And so this week, our schedule looks different, but it mimics our schedule from school. Our kids are in classrooms with teachers face-to-face from 8:45 until 3:45, some staying on longer. And the kids are going through their core classes, their prime time where they meet with their advisor face-to-face, what's happening, how are you, what can I do for you? Then they go through their daily schedule, and we're even providing small group instruction. So kids are set in their small groups just as they were, as if we were in our building. And so what I would say is we took our school building and we made our school building virtual, but nothing much has changed as far as instruction. And so we're really proud of being able to do that.
And David, just saying a bit more about the behind the scenes, I know that access to computers is also an issue. So I comment on a couple of things simultaneously. First, every child in the school gets a computer, which frankly, we consider a civil rights issue. The world that the kids will be inheriting requires to be technological savvy. It's not just a lucky addition that we can provide. It is actually a necessity. So our kids, our staff have a level of technical savviness that helped us in this moment. It certainly helped when we needed to go online and they had the actual devices. So in the week or two prior to going remote, we'd been thinking about this. And it is really collaborative because when Carrie and I were having a weekly meeting with our board chair just to fill him in, as we do more often now that we're in this situation, he said to us, wow, that sounds great. You have scope and sequence from your teachers already put on the side. Fantastic. You're starting to think about this, great. But you really should do a practice run. And I just share that anecdote to show what a real team it was that led to our plan.
So I do want to just highlight something that you said, Evan, the importance during this crisis to keep your board in the loop and to have regular communications with your board. And I've been saying in some other podcasts that we've done, some other webinars, that the need for strong leadership now is greater than ever. And so I'm glad that part of the team that you have is your board, in addition to Carrie, your instructional staff, and your teachers. So Carrie, before we were talking a little bit about your schedule, and you were showing it to me. Do you mind if you walk through your schedule? Because I think a lot of schools would be surprised how long your school day is now that you've transitioned to remote instruction. And it might be helpful for them to actually see what the school day looks like in this new environment for the School in the Square students.
Sure. I'll share my screen for a little bit and then come on back.
Thanks.
Okay, so on Sunday evening, our kids each get a schedule. It's sent out again every morning just as a reminder. But this is a sample of a schedule. This is one of our classes. We have 12 classes, and this was from this current week. And so you can see at the top there's a Zoom meeting number, and that's the number that they would go into if they needed to call in for any reason. But this class in particular starts at 8:45. These are all of the prime times. So they meet with their prime time teacher first. And again, prime time is our advisory program, and that happens every single morning. That's our check-in. This group of students then goes into an ELA class. Our ELA classes are co-taught, so you see two teachers' names here. And then for this week, this is how they broke up the kids. So they're in two different breakout sessions. And then you can see there are any notes here for this class. So these are the tools that they will need to be successful in that classroom. Then the kids have social studies next. Again, here's the link that they go into. And you'll see here, there's a second teacher listed on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. And that's our ESL teacher. And she's pushing in to support ESL students here. And again, the notes for anything that they'll need, all resources. Then they're going into science. And again, you can see that our ESL teacher is pushing into these classes on these days again. Again, trying to maintain the support in co-teaching that we have in our classroom. Again, here are breakout groups. So they'll start together and then they'll break out through Zoom into these two groups. Again, just making sure the kids are prepared and know where to go. They're then going into math. And again, there are two teachers. It's a co-taught classroom. Here are the notes reminding kids what they'll need for the day. And then they all have lunch. Period 6, this class either has a PE class on Monday and Wednesday. During the school year, our kids go to physical education twice a week. And so we're maintaining that in our virtual classroom, virtual school. And then they'll have a study hall period. And so during study hall, they may be called in for extra learning time by a teacher, or they may just have the opportunity to work on their own. Then we begin our small groups. And you'll see this group right here is a reading group. And then you can see that the names of the kids are listed. There's a small group math, then there's a writing class, and each day different offerings are given to students during that period. Then they have independent reading, which is on their own. However, you'll also see that some teachers will call kids in to finish up work. We call that extra learning time or office hours. And then period 9, this group has homework on their own, but you can see the science teacher has called in extra kids. The math teachers are also providing small group instruction. Again, we try to empower our kids and have them really say when I need extra help. So at the end of each class, the teachers will say, if anyone didn't understand that, please chat with me and I'll put you down for extra learning time. And then they call them back during the day.
Great, thank you for sharing that.
Cool.
So I know one of the key pillars of the work at School in the Square is a deep commitment to ensuring that students with disabilities and English language learners have equitable access to your curriculum and that you're closing the achievement gap and supporting those students. Can you talk a little bit about the supports and scaffolding that you've put into place now for your most at-risk students, particularly students with disabilities and English language learners? And how do you ensure that those students, which so often can fall through the cracks, have continued access to your educational program?
So the schedule that I chose to show actually had a cluster of students that were second language learners, which is why you saw the ENL teacher pushing in multiple times during the week. But all of our classes are co-taught. And so when they make their pull-out groups, they're going to offer different scaffolds within each of the groups to meet the needs of those learners. The afternoon schedule with the small groups helps to intensify and support and fill in gaps for kids where they may have entered 6th grade with certain learning gaps. And so those small groups really address the needs of our special learners and help to support their growth. So it's not only completing work, which is often what we try and get kids to do, but it's really filling in the gaps for those kids so that they can actually work on grade level material. But within the classroom, if you notice that teachers have certain groups pulled out, those groups are working at different levels. Even though the work is the same, the work is scaffolded in very different ways. So for example, in an ELA class, one teacher may be doing a lot more independent work, where the other teacher may have the text actually, she's pre-recorded it so that the kids can listen to it multiple times and may have certain notes written for them so that they can actually follow along.
Great. And can you talk a little bit about how School in the Square ensures rigor uh, through your educational continuity plan? How are you assessing student participation? How are you ensuring that students are getting the concepts? And how are your teachers checking in with students in general?
So you'll see on most of these, they start the day with Zoom links, but most of the classes are also in a Google Classroom. And so kids are handing in work every period. Teachers are still using their good practices from their classroom, like exit tickets, to ensure that kids understand what was taught that day. Teachers are still giving quizzes and tests. I was in a ELA class the other day. They're in the middle of writing an essay. And during, with the use of Zoom, they're able to put all of the kids in a breakout room and call one kid in at a time and go over and give feedback on that child's particular essay. And then that child goes off and tries to edit. So what's amazing about this experience is it's different, of course, but it doesn't look that different from our work in the classroom every day. And that's what's really both exciting and invigorating about going into the classrooms and watching. I was in a social studies classroom the other day, and we're working on group projects, which seems odd in a virtual world. But she had each of the groups in a breakout room, and if you can pop into those breakout rooms as she was doing to monitor them. But the kids were all engaged in the breakout room. They were arguing about what to put in the essay next and who is going to present, but all of the real things that happen in a classroom. And so it's very similar. I was in a science class the other day where they were giving an assessment, and the assessment was to guide them in their reteaching. And so they were giving an assessment to see if the concepts they had taught so far to that point had been understood. And then the way the program works is the two co-teachers then would branch off into two groups and be able to support the kids in that way. So the same rigorous learning that was happening in our actual building is continuing to happen in our virtual school. And so, you know, I'm fortunate with the rest of my leadership team that we've been able to pop into classes, give the same kind of feedback to teachers that we do in our school, but we're doing it virtually now. And it's been, you know, I wouldn't say it's been great because great's a bad word right now, but it, you know, the amount of work that our kids are doing is intense. And they're really rising to the occasion. I'm proud. I'm so proud of all of them.
It's fantastic. We're proud of School in the Square as well. Was it difficult for you to, is it difficult for you to keep students engaged since they're at home throughout such a, you know, throughout the school day? And is it difficult for your teachers to keep on task? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge. Today at 12:50, we have our faculty meeting, and our faculty meeting is actually working with our staff to talk about student engagement and how can we continue to push that engagement in this virtual time. And so, of course, looking at our teachers for best practices, and, you know, as we popped around to classrooms, we want them to be able to share some of the things that they're doing that others can learn from. And so that's our faculty meeting today. But it is, you know, we did survey our kids, and we continue to survey them often through prime time and also through online surveys. And they are struggling, you know, finding that special space where they can really concentrate on what they're doing and not be disturbed by other siblings or by their phone or by the TV. And so in prime time, our teachers have been talking a lot about that. And I shared in the beginning that we had adjusted our schedule. And so our core teachers are teaching in the morning blocks, and our small group teachers are teaching in the afternoon blocks. And that way each group has their time clustered so that it's more focused, and they're not online from 8:45 until 4:30. They can pop on and off because their schedule has changed. And also from hearing our kids, their concern was they didn't have enough time to actually do the work. And so you'll see at the bottom there were separate times for study hall, independent work, and homework, so that we also built in time for them to get their work done. So, the surveys are helping us to really hear what our kids are thinking, what their needs are, and our teachers and our families. While parents are very grateful that we're keeping the kids occupied and on task, and the rigor has continued, they also have concerns about screen time and how much screen time. And so we're really trying to balance that. And so teachers are working hard at, we'll start out together on Zoom. Here's your assignment. You have 20 minutes, and then come back onto Zoom, and I will check through and review and answer any questions, but I'm here. You can pop on and off at any time. And so we're really working to fine tune our virtual school.
And you know what, David, I'll just add, student engagement looks differently for different kids, right? So if you're the child who was so worried about what the girl next to you thought, maybe you had less engagement in the school than you do at home. Maybe you were the shy child who now just has to go to the chat function on the side and can say something. So I would say there's real lessons for all of us in this. And I think that when we come back together, that will be something we'll be able to do. With children can reflect on their own level of engagement at home as compared to school, and try and think about that so that we can take the best of both when we do get back.
Thank you. Good point. I want to follow up on that. But I do want to say, to me, it seems like the principles of good instruction aren't thrown out the window when you're transitioning to remote learning. That everything that School in the Square is doing is just good instruction, whether you're in a brick and mortar building or remotely, that you're letting students engage in the academic content, you're giving them voice, you're differentiating instruction, you're providing scaffoldings and support. And that was true before, and it's true now. And something that I think we've seen throughout all of the exemplars we've highlighted is this notion of you don't need to do anything fancy in order to keep delivering high quality instruction. And I see that coming out in School in the Square as well. But touching upon something that you mentioned, Evan, you spoke a little bit about the lessons learned during this crisis and ideas that you can bring back to your brick and mortar school once you resume classes. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the lessons learned and some of the ways that you might change your day-to-day instruction moving forward out of things that you've learned from this current crisis?
So I think my number one headline would be TBD. It's all happening. We're 2 weeks into it. What I am clear about is that there will be tremendous lessons learned, and that we will take that back to our bricks and mortar and be more powerful. One obvious headline is what is the next step for our organization of integrating technology into our daily work? Yes, the children have computers. Yes, we think that they're savvy about using them to get information and to provide information. But with all that we have practiced here, what is the next step for that? Another thing that I think we'll all have to be asking ourselves together is, okay, how did we spend our time when we weren't together? And what I mean is, what did your day look like? I haven't talked about this with Carrie, but like Carrie can say, I don't know, I was in 17 more classrooms this week because all I had to do was press a button. That might be instructive. How did we work together in ways that were additive and powerful that we could bring back. The same will be true for every single person in our community. A teacher might reflect on how much time they spend talking rather than working with kids, and think about, did I actually have to give up more control because they weren't in front of me? And hey, maybe I can give up more control. That's okay. So I think that, and kids too. So I think that there'll be lots for us to reflect on. I'm not exactly sure, what those outcomes are, but I'm positive they're there.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to what Evan said before, I was in a math class yesterday, and at the end of the class, the teacher made the announcement, if anyone wants extra help today, you can go into the chat and send me a private message. And so 12 kids sent in a private message. And I, of course, she gave me access so I could see the private messages.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say is at the end of that typical class, only about 4 kids would have raised their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are lessons for us to learn about the privacy of being able to hide behind the screen. Like I could shut off my picture right now and go for a walk within my space while we were still talking. But I think, Evan is so right. There are so many things that I think when we are hopefully back in our school, and I hope of course that's for them later, but whenever it's safe, that we will learn from this experience, both teachers and students.
Thank you for sharing that. Can you talk a little bit about, as you said, you're 2 weeks into this. What are some lessons learned in your early implementation of your educational continuity plan that maybe you're thinking of changing over the next 2 weeks or however long school is out? And what are some lessons learned, maybe things that you should have done differently in the beginning, that if you had to do this again, and knock on wood, we won't, but what are some of the things that you would have done differently?
I'm not telling you how to feel, David, but reframing that, we made the best decisions we could at the time, and we're a learning organization. So we continue to just take the information we have, do our best to solicit feedback from all our stakeholders, and move forward. So, yeah, I guess in retrospect, you could have even been more prepared, but, I think we were thoughtful in the week before we left to make sure chargers were working and calculators were there. But, I guess there's always more you could have done. So just reframing the question just a bit, we continue to react. We have core values that will never change about how we see our relationship with our stakeholders, but how we best implement that remains somewhat iterative.
And, I will also add, I don't know if it answers this question or the question before, but, one of the things that has been really powerful and that excites me and charges me up every day is, I watch the attendance being taken, and we have a social emotional team, a leadership team, and an ops team that has been divided up into our 3 grades. And within a 15-minute block, any child who hasn't logged on gets a personal phone call, parents are texted, kids are texted, and I'm sort of mission control. I have 3 computers going at one time, but I watch that every day. I also make phone calls, but I watch that go down every day. And within a 15-minute block, we have over 95% of our kids online learning. And so when I think about that and how we've pulled together and that teamwork and how that teamwork really makes a difference, I think about that going back into our school and really thinking about if that team was standing at the front door every day and, how we can use that same powerful messaging and powerful group dynamics to really support kids on a daily basis. It's it's one of the most amazing things to watch every morning. And then that same team of about 15 people meets every day at 10 o'clock just to share, any messages from parents, any struggles that have happened, and then we brainstorm moving forward. And really that team just has become just so energizing and powerful. It's really incredible.
Thank you for sharing that. And so it sounds like you have these an incredible number of touch points from with your students and with your families, that if it's not calls in the morning, it's conversations during the day. And it sounds like you also have your operations staff all hands on deck as well, assisting. Just to close this out, can you talk a little bit about how you integrate your support staff into the work that you're doing right now?
All of our staff is integrated. Everybody is so involved. So, certainly we are meeting every afternoon. We have a grade level meeting so that teachers can share anything that is going on. We start with student issues, and then we go into sort of, just as a teacher, what's happening, what's frustrating, what's going great, what, incredible thing did a kid do today that surprised us. And so those grade level meetings are happening in the afternoon. As I said, every day at 10 o'clock, we have, SEL, SLT, ops, this whole support staff coming on and brainstorming. Today we'll have a full faculty meeting of all 52 people where we'll meet together, and we have a pretty rigorous plan for them. And then after that, we'll break out into our grade level teams where teachers will then really focus in on what kids need additional supports. And if a kid is needing an additional support, which teacher is going to take on that child, and who's going to meet with them during extra learning time, during study hall, and then we'll break up into groups so that everyone can support kids that need a little bit of extra help. We've also, sorry, Evan, we've also been in touch with several organizations that have offered to tutor or mentor some kids during this time. And so I'll be working with some of those college students to pair them with some kids in the afternoon who could use some extra tutoring, mentoring, and just overall support.
But David, saying some of the same things Carrie did, but in my own words, I would say a lesson learned is we've always prided ourselves on collaboration and on trying to listen, but the collaboration has never been higher. So I think that is something for us to think about and possibly to take back. But we have really experienced people leading these different teams, and the different teams have never been more integrated into the life of the school. So the ops team is literally on the phone with kids all day long. This one couldn't get into the Zoom link. This one's charger this one had whatever technology question. Carrie gave you an image before of a combination of our admin team and our SEL team, making phone calls. But those phone calls go on all day. So you log on first period. By fifth period, if you're not in your fifth period class, the teacher texts that team's social worker and you get a call again fifth period. So I think that the check-ins, collaborations that have been built into our schedule is something that we're proud of, but we also notice and to consider for when we do get back, right? Sometimes when you're in the school, you don't always have time. We try our best. And now we have this all built right into our schedules. We can look and think and iterate. And I think that has contributed to the success. Finally, I'll say we've also tried to do that with our parents as a leadership philosophy. The worse things are, the clearer and more consistent your communication needs to be. And we have adopted that philosophy at this time.
Well, thank you very much, Evan. Thank you, Carrie. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy days to help share some of the effective practices and great work happening at School in the Square. Is there anything you want to close with before I give a little information about how people can connect with you?
I guess I want to say that at this time, I feel so fortunate to be part of such a caring and giving staff, group of kids, and parents. So I'm feeling very grateful for that.
And I guess I would just add, doing this, of course, I share those sentiments, but doing this webinar, if that's what this is, reminds me, like makes more tangible, we really are all in this together. And anything that we can do, we're open and happy to share. And we really do feel part of a larger New York State system that's trying to do right by kids.
Great. Well, thank you again, both. If you do want to learn more about the great work happening at School in the Square, either during the current crisis or during normal times, you should check out their website. It's schoolinthesquare.org, and you can see I'm sharing it here. But there's a lot of great information here, and I strongly encourage you to take a look. Evan and Carrie, thank you. And to all of our schools, we wish you the best, and we'll be in touch. Have a nice day.